Hello everybody, this is John. Welcome to the Merschman Seeds Ag Weather Outlook, September 30th, 2017. Well, as predicted, the western Corn Belt received a soaking rain, not as much as down in Texas and parts of the south central U.S., but still a fairly decent 2 to 3 inch rain right in this yellow stripe here, parts of Minnesota, South Dakota, right through Nebraska, parts of Kansas. Then as we went further to the east, not nearly as much. Now, Iowa's been very dry. You can see that there was some rainfall in Iowa, generally about a half inch, but there were some pockets of heavier rain as well. Then once we get into the really dry area, eastern Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, not any rain of any significance over the last week. Now, you might have seen this over the last week. I sent out this graph here, and this is the precipitation across the Corn Belt, the cumulative rainfall. So this is last year, and you might remember last year we had a lot of rain that really helped crops. That's the blue line. The red line is this year. So first of all, you can see from the entire Corn Belt, there's definitely a deficit compared to last year. And then the 20-year average is this black line. So we're actually running right at the average. But look at this. We were doing better a month or so ago. We were actually ahead of last year for a while, and this is showing that recent dryness over the central and eastern Corn Belt. Look at this divergence of these two lines right here. So over the last week, we had this temperature gradient, quite cool in the western U.S., quite warm in the eastern U.S., and that's the boundary. Right along that boundary of those two air masses is where we had all the action over the last week. Now it really is getting dry. Drought is expanding. We started out with some abnormally dry conditions a couple weeks ago, and now it's moving into a phase of drought from eastern Iowa, actually a fairly good part of Iowa, north and east Missouri, and especially Illinois is really getting hard hit. But look at parts of Michigan, scattered parts of Wisconsin, especially southwest Michigan's really hit hard as well. Also smaller parts, very small part of Ohio. So areas in yellow soils are quite dry. And then as we go to the west, you can see parts of Kansas, even with that rain, still remain a bit dry. But over areas to the north, Nebraska, South Dakota, we had some recent improvement. And you can see that in the areas in blue here. That's where soils got wetter over the last week. But look at that area over the eastern Corn Belt, dry and continue to get dry. Now, the tropics have been pretty active, unusually active, near record setting. Maria is now pushing very quickly. It's caught up in the upper flow. But we do have something in the Gulf of Mexico that looks like it could develop into a weak system over the next week that is pushing up to the north-northwest. That could affect parts of the southeast U.S. and parts of the Florida Peninsula over the next week. But there are no signs at this time that that would affect the Corn Belt. So right now this week we have a jet stream that is changing. We have that warmer weather that is going to once again reinforce itself over a good part of the Corn Belt this week. So we had some very hot air, then we had some cooler air and drier air. And now once again it looks like it's going to be warming up as we get into the early part of October. Now with that boundary, it does look like there will be some rainfall once again, and this is where we're having a transition from that warmer air ahead of it that is going to pushing in this week and some cooler air behind it. We're actually staying quite active for this time of year. Normally you wouldn't think it'd be this active in late September and October. Harvest season is usually a pretty quiet time. But again, this is over a similar area, so areas that have got some rain over the last week could get another couple inches of rain over the next week, and that could pose some problems because that could total up to above 4, 5, or 6 inches of rain over the 2-week period. Again, if you go to the east, over areas really dry, look at Illinois, not much rain over the next 7 days. I can't rule out a little bit of rain, but certainly nothing that's going to be worth mentioning as far as alleviation of the drought. Now we get into the October 4th through 9th period. Look at that shading there, brown. That's saying the jet stream is further up to the north. The trough is over the west, and that means warmer temperatures over the entire Corn Belt. So even though we're all experiencing a little bit of cooler weather over the weekend and late this past week, It does look like late summer type conditions, early fall when it's still warm, have not ended, and it does look like we're going to get in the 6 to 10 day range another warm up where temperatures could be anywhere from 5 to 8 degrees above normal. Then as we get into the 11 to 14 day range, the 9th through the 14th, the middle of October, well, that jet stream changes once again. So changeable weather, changeable temperatures, and that should bring another cool down as we get into that period. So we're really going to be seeing some alternating temperatures about every 5 days. Started off cool, then go to warm, then back to near normal temperatures as we get into the middle part of October. So precipitation this week is right with that transition. You can see where it is in week 1. Now week 2 is a little interesting here. That boundary pushes off to the east, and there is some possibility of some enhancement of precipitation in week 2 in areas that are very, very dry. But let's not get too excited about this quite yet. It is the second week off, but we will keep an eye on that, and maybe there could be some rainfall in these areas. I know it's probably going to be a situation where it's too little, too late, but from a perspective of keeping our soil moisture recharged, might not be a bad idea to not get too far behind. So when we look at the next 10 days, as far as soil moisture changes go, here you go. The darker shades of blue are the highest likelihood of getting more saturating rainfall, but there is a chance of some lighter increases of soil moisture, more modest over eastern Iowa and even northern Illinois. Don't forget to keep an eye on the Weather Decisions Planner. A number of you have already signed up on that. bwodecisions.com, NCGA/NCGA-WDP. So I'll keep that up there if you're looking frantically around to find something to write that down, and I hope you are, because this is something I use every day, just sort of keep an eye on things. Sometimes I'm sort of surprised. Something I might not have noticed pops up here, gives you a lot of information. So I'll keep this up there while I give you your takeaway points, and I think the story is going to be changing temperatures as we alternate the jet stream, and still more rain to the west over areas that got recent rain, and mainly dry over the east, especially parts of Indiana and Ohio look quite dry over the next 2 weeks. That's this week's briefing. Hope you have a great weekend and take care.